I'm Jody Eckleberry-Hunt, and as I've mentioned, I'm doing some interviews with local psychologists to promote my new book, Badass Stories, Grit, Growth, Hope, and Healing in the Shit Show. We're very lucky today to have Dr. Heather Kirkpatrick, who is a health psychologist. She wears many hats. Not only does she train physicians in communication skills, multiple areas of academic medical education, she also trains psychologists. She has a private practice, but most importantly, in my opinion, is Heather's a fabulous public speaker. She does a lot of workshops on wellness and resilience. And I'm going to shut up because it's really about what Heather has to say. But I know that in the course of her career, she's seen a lot of badass. So I've asked her to come in or I should join us on this platform and share, in her opinion, what makes someone badass. So Heather, what do you consider to be badass, or what have you seen that you think makes somebody badass?
Yeah, such a great provocative question, Jody. To me, when I think about someone being badass, they really bring it. And what I mean by that is they maybe have this internal drive or standard of what it means to kind of like show up, not just kind of like passively moving through life, but there's this active participation and oftentimes this I think drivenness for growth, to be really good at something that a person values. So I've known some badass parents in my lifetime, like people I know that are like, I'm just astounded at how well they parent and how intentional they are in doing that. I've certainly known some badass doctors who I think, again, bring that sense of not just duty or obligation to care for patients, but really a desire to really hone their skills and be good at what they do so that they can help, patients. That's probably why they became a doctor to begin with. I've known some badass patients, in my career. And again, I think people that, might be going through tough things, but seek to, not just bounce back, but sort of come back better, than they were before, maybe whatever happened that maybe brought them in to therapy. Lots of badass nurses out there. I'm constantly impressed with how well nurses advocate for their patients. And I think that's reflected by how much trust the public has in nurses to watch out for them.
So I didn't give you like a list of questions at the front end. I want everybody to know that like this is really off the cuff kind of stuff, but I can't help but thinking as you were talking that you probably saw a lot of badass during the pandemic because you were in the front lines with a lot of healthcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to be like where badass really showed up.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there were a lot of professionals in healthcare who dug pretty darn deep, and dug deep. And again, I think let their values drive their intentionality. And I remember asking a group of physicians kind of pretty early on in the pandemic, one of the things that happened in many hospitals is that people got redeployed to do, different things than what they would normally be doing. And that was, pretty stressful for a lot of people. And I remember asking a group of physicians I was talking to about, resilience and kind of being psychologically prepared, what qualities they wanted to bring to the pandemic. And I'll never forget this one internal medicine doctor said steadfastness. And I thought that is such a great word because again, it was kind of that doubling down on what's really important and being able to contribute, maybe something you'd been training such a long time for. And I don't just mean in terms of like, coming up with a cure for COVID. Lots of times it was recognizing that, maybe that nurse or doctor was the only person touching the patient, talking to the patient, seeing the patient, and recognizing that it was, again, really so important to show up in that moment. Because that might be the only moment in the day where that patient got to actually like interact with another human being like live. So yeah, I think we saw a lot of badasses during the pandemic, and we still do, because, many of those sort of domino effects from the pandemic, are creating super stressful conditions in healthcare right now.
And so again, what you're highlighting is, because you said it's bringing, in your opinion, one of the things that makes people badass is really bringing it. And during the height of the pandemic, it was scary and it was a threatening situation. So it's not that it's something that you want to happen, but if it's going to happen, you're going to bring it. And that question that you ask is perfect, meaning, in this situation, what can you control? And it's what you bring. And owning it, like, okay, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to show up. This is what I'm going to bring. And it's channeling your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the $1 million question. Can you build badass, or how can you increase your badass, or what do you think about that? Because this is the question that's right up your alley in resilience building and all the workshops you do and the motivational speaking, which you're fabulous at. How can, for those people who are watching, how can they build their badass, or can they?
Yeah, no, I think it's something that can be built, and it's a little bit like the psychological concept of being self-actualized. Like you never fully arrive. Maybe you can always get better at it, and that's how I think about being a badass. Is you can always be a badder ass, maybe is the way to think. But I think things that allow people to build that within themselves. I think it does at first take a little bit of going inward, and because again, my conceptualization of it is really related to what you value. And that can't come from the outside. That has to come internally. And so I think people do need to have some self-awareness of what's really important to them. And once they know that, then I think there's lots of skills that can help you continually move in that direction of acting, out of those strongly held values. I think, there's some research out there that shows that I think badass people, people that are able to, again, really act from their deep core set of values, have a very wide zone of resilience, right? So things happen, and maybe they need to get some energy and put some energy towards something. Sometimes, all of us have times where we just like maybe need to get a lot done, or we need to respond very quickly to something, or something's happening and we need to kind of like get in there to help. And then there are other times where things are slower. And I think having a very wide range of being able to vary between those things helps you kind of stay in that state of flow where you feel effective and you feel relaxed and you can connect to other people. And there's lots of evidence out there to show that there are things we can do to expand that zone of resilience that we operate out of. And if we get kicked out of it and get too hyper or too low, things we can learn to do to get back within that sort of center zone.
So a lot of self-awareness. And it sounds like you're also saying it's badass to own your strengths and your values, and being able to stand for that, and knowing it might not be right for everybody else, but it's the lane that you've chosen, and max it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us today. And is there anything else you want to leave folks with?
Hmm, I don't think so.